Hello and welcome back to the Transfer Flow. And on today's episode, Jeremie Frimpong could be on his way to Liverpool. But what does this tell us about the Reds' long-term plans? Ajax remain in pole position for the title despite some bad recent results. But why do fans hate coach Francesco Farioli? And Antonio Conte magic persists in Italy. How is the Italian on the verge of securing another miracle Scudetto? Plus, we've got a championship player for you to watch. That's all on today's episode of the Transfer Flow. So we're back for another midweek edition of the Transfer Flow, and things are starting to heat up around European football right now. And in order to help me sift through all the news this week, I've got Hayden Van Bril with me. How are you doing, Hayden?
Yeah, really well. We're getting to the end of the season here. A lot of interest in leagues. The Premier League season kind of wrapped up maybe a little bit early this year, but elsewhere in Europe, things are going down to the wire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just honestly, I think as well that like whenever you come in, we end up having incredibly Dutch episodes. Like we got a couple of vans on here as well, but then today we just end up talking a lot about Dutch players, and I guess it's positive if you follow the Dutch national team in that like finally for the first time in a while it feels like there are young players popping up in basically every position who are interesting. One of those guys is who we're going to kick off with today, and that's Jeremie Frimpong, who, according to German media, could well be on his way to Liverpool. Now, either they think that this has a very strong chance of happening or it's already happening. About 40 million euros seems to be the rumored price. And he's obviously had a good few seasons with Bayer Leverkusen, won a title there, has really locked down that right wing back slot. And for Liverpool, I think that if you know the very basic rudiments, you can imagine why people would think, oh, yeah, Trent goes out, Frimpong comes in. It's like, Trent's an attacking fullback. Frimpong's attacking and can play there. Therefore, this makes sense. But when you look, I mean, you don't have to get. We wouldn't always use the FB ref green bars to judge somebody, but he is just like not on the ball, right? This is a guy who does a bit of ball carrying, but essentially gets free in the final third. What do you think of the player, first of all, before we get into him as a fit for Liverpool and what it could mean for their squad building?
Yeah, I think it's a player with an interesting trajectory, right? This is a player that came out of City's academy. I think at the time there was some feeling that he maybe lacked the size and the power to really contribute and have a clear pathway to the first team. At the time, playing more as a winger, right? And so he went to Celtic and I believe won Young Player of the Year there, sort of pre-COVID. And worked his way into this sort of wingback role as it sort of developed in football. A player with a ton of speed, with the ability to beat people 1v1. Obviously, the technical attributes that you'd expect from a Manchester City academy product that goes on to play at the top level. The biggest question for him is size. He's not a very big player. I think the
Mm.
fear, especially coming to English football, is can this guy defend at the back post when he's got a winger, a fullback, someone posted up on him, maybe a nine pulls to the back post? Is he going to be able to do that sort of role? And it's the Leverkusen team obviously won their first ever title with Xabi Alonso. On the other side had Grimaldo, who's sort of a fullback that maybe in a back four wasn't able to excel to the degree that he has as a wingback. And Frimpong is maybe even more superlative in that way. Yeah, I think for Dutch national team fans who maybe do enjoy when we do these episodes, they'll have seen Frimpong play as an out and out winger, playing as a right wing, and he's looked pretty good in that role. Now it's a Dutch national team that doesn't have the sort of set number nine that they used to have with Van Nistelrooy or Van Persie. And so Frimpong's ability to stretch the game, his willingness to run and be explosive and get up the field, I think has been a really big positive for the national team.
Hmm.
But it's interesting when you watch him do that. You're sort of thinking like, well, that's a lot of times where Salah is operating. Salah is used to having Trent deeper, picking passes, sometimes wide, sometimes coming inside, varying his position. Frimpong, the guy that spends a lot of his career out wide and is maybe, as you're saying, his superlatives aren't necessarily just on the ball and as a carrier. And so seeing him move into that role, yeah, it's definitely not an apples to apples switch. There's got to be some other configuring that goes on at Liverpool if they want to take on this player.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's kind of interesting that like the Dutch national team is one of the few teams in the world which gets value out of this kind of player. Like, because Denzel Dumfries is not the same player, but there's a little bit of a similarity there, right? Like he's like this off-ball runner basically who doesn't really defend very much. He's not a plus possession player, but he's got real smarts when it comes to picking up attacking positions. The difference, obviously, is that Dumfries is an enormous physical presence, and Frimpong is not. If you do sign him, it feels like you need him balanced out by really good passers and defenders on the other side, right? And also that it's going to be asking quite a lot of the centre back inside him. And honestly, there's a part of me that would love to see Frimpong play with Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is the best in the world at finding these guys in the channel. If Liverpool do this, it does kind of feel like they're announcing we're going to a back three from now on, right? Everybody was talking about this in our Slack yesterday, and it does seem like that's the only way to make sense of this. Even if they go out and buy, your hybrid left back, left wing back, hybrid left back, left centre back, it doesn't quite make sense unless you're going to play Frimpong in the position he's excelled for the last couple of years.
Yeah, it doesn't feel with Liverpool sort of still lacking that six profile. I know they have Endo in there, but he's not really kind of the starting guy. It feels surprising that Liverpool's sort of two strongest links are aggressive, really running fullbacks, but on opposite sides, Kirkesh on the left and Frimpong on the right. It feels I think to us and looking at this with experience working in professional football, looking at that, it feels like that's probably not something they're going to do. They're probably going to want to have one more attacking one. Again, in the newsletter, and when you and Ted talked about it, talking about Mingueza and some of these other attacking right fullbacks, and maybe that gets balanced out on the other side if Kirkesh isn't the guy that you feel really 100% on going for. And you sort of flip that profile again, if Frimpong, the noise coming out of Germany is that this is like done, this is happening, there's a really big chance of this going on. It sort of feels like, okay, well, then you need to balance on the other side and you need to recruit more center backs. I think having Konate as the player on the side next to Frimpong is I think you can see that happening as the outside of the back three. I think with his development over the last couple of years, again, it's a different role, but I think it's something that he could step into and possibly do well. It's really a question of, well, how do you balance it on the left side of this to then maximize Frimpong's ability to get forward and not need to be deep and helping out and build up in that way? Well, then you probably need help on the other side, having a bit more of a conservative left back or someone that can vary their position and turn you into a back three, both yeah, maybe defensively, but especially offensively in build up to then have possibly kind of a 3-2 shape with two midfielders coming down. One of the names that's been floated around there is Jorrel Hato, Ajax player, left footed, has played both as a left side center back and a left fullback. What do you kind of think about that? Again, it's like very Dutch. It sort of feels like sometimes when teams have that, it just sort of snowballs. Slot is Dutch, Frimpong is linked, and then it goes, well, let's just keep it going. So do you think that's just kind of a rumor, or do you think there's something to that?
I think there's probably something to it because I think that Liverpool need a left-sided centre back and they need a left back, and getting somebody who can play both those positions is a good move. He's going to need some work, right? Like, I mean, the good thing about him, I guess, is that he comes in, and if they can't move Robertson and they can't move Tsimikas, then it doesn't render those guys completely superfluous. Like, you can rotate those three guys through those positions, and it makes quite a bit of sense to me. Hato is a a great athlete, right? Like this is like that's the thing that's really exciting about him. And he is a good enough passer at centre back that you can see a career for him at this really high level. If he's going to play left centre back in the long run in a back three, I kind of want to see quite a bit more, right? Because then we're saying it doesn't matter that much if your midfielders are a little bit limited in the 3-4-3 because they need to defend, they need to do a little bit of ball progression, but not that much because you expect your centre backs to do more, you expect your wing backs to do more. But there's a reason that other teams who do this have guys like Alessandro Bastoni, like at left centre back. So right now, I think it would be a bit of a development move. I've got to say I don't like it immediately because the Kerkers stuff I wonder if that is a bit of a vestige of when they weren't sure that Van Dijk and Salah were going to sign again, and they were like, right, okay, well, we'll go and get this kind of player, and now that they know that Van Dijk and Salah have signed, it makes sense to try and think, how are we going to maximize these guys over the next couple of years? And I do think the 3-4-3 does that. You know, you get Van Dijk playing as a central centre back, you get Frimpong outside Salah, and it means Salah's a bit more central. His lack of defensive contribution doesn't matter quite as much, and he gets to create for Frimpong as well as getting shots off himself. The thing is, if your plan is to maximize those two guys, then going and getting Hato, who is more of a development type player, doesn't really quite make sense to me. I realize that this is a lot of different stuff trying to move, but I'm just trying to make sense
Yeah.
of what Liverpool's plan A was this summer, what their plan B might be. You know, it feels like they've had to plan for this summer with two possible trajectories in mind.
Yeah, I think with Hato, like you're saying, the athletic profile is really exciting. The age of the player is really exciting. Jorrel Hato is Ajax's youngest ever captain in European
Mm-hmm.
competition. That is the kind of thing and the excitement that is coming out with this player, that this is a guy that really has a lot of ability, that he has the maturity, is a leader at a very young age, and that's a really special profile if you can pair him alongside someone like Virgil van Dijk while he develops, well, he can also then maybe athletically take some of the burden off of Van Dijk to cover out
Yeah,
in the
sure.
channels and do that. Then Van Dijk, who is a plus value passer, you're able to keep getting that while hopefully papering over his weaknesses. The question is Hato close enough to that sort of Premier League, top Champions League level for that to not be showing? Because I think ultimately, if Liverpool go out and they spend what it will take for Hato, which I believe has been sort of rumored as 30 to 40 million, kind of somewhere in there. Maybe it gets a bit lighter than that, but that's sort of what I've heard in the past. He's maybe not a starter right away for this team. He's sort of the player that I think comes in. Robertson plays 60, 70, and then he plays the last 20. He's a player that, if you're splitting up the minutes, he's playing 1/3 of those sort of left fullback, left side center back three kind of minutes. Um, and is that okay for Liverpool in the short term, that he's sort of a bit of a project and needed to balance out? And probably there's going to be a little bit of growing pains there. But again, getting a young center back in, left footed, to learn alongside Van Dijk, possibly with those leadership traits, I think there's something exciting there. Does it lower sort of Liverpool's ceiling for the upcoming season? Is that something Liverpool are okay with? Again, signing Van Dijk and signing Mo Salah, that's a let's get some stuff done right now kind of move. We've got another crack at the Champions League before these guys move on, and we've got to really
Mm.
start to retool. And we'll have the some of the budget and the salary back to retool, but there's going to have to be some more development. And the question, a little bit, I think, is we talked about when Slot came in. This was Slot sort of a guy that would be able to work with the current Liverpool squad and try to get the most out of it without needing wholesale changes, right? Amorim has come in and they've gone, yep, we're going to a back three. We're only going to play this way. We need these different players. You got to get me Dorgu at the very least. It's a little bit different. Slot came in, he sort of managed the team. He made a few sort of tactical changes, but largely kept the group the same. We're going to start to get to that point, and we'll know more after the summer, but we're going to get to the point where it really is, what is Slot and Liverpool's sort of vision to move forward for the
Yeah.
next sort of 2 or 3 years, and that process needs to start this summer. I think that's very clear, and signing Hato and then signing Frimpong would be a very clear indicator of the type of direction that Liverpool are going, and a very stark change from how Liverpool played under Klopp with a back four for years and years.
Yeah, I agree. I think but it's interesting, isn't it, that like when we talk about Frimpong, we're basically saying, in order to make this make sense, we need to see at least one other signing that gives us an indication of what's going on. I mean, yeah, the Hato thing, it does just feel like if the intention is to win now, then I don't know whether it's who else is out there really, like Nkapie or someone, maybe like one of these like also very athletic left-sided players who can play left back, can play left centre back, is going to have to cover a lot of ground. Because the whole thing is with Liverpool, they've been incredibly thin at centre back this season, and they've been fortunate that Konate and Van Dijk have stayed fit for the whole campaign, basically. But relying
It's
on that
it's
going, Go on.
Yeah, it's really weird to think about Frimpong being backed up by Joe Gomez or something
Yeah,
like that, and
yeah,
how different that would be for Liverpool. I think that's like you're sort of thinking of like, well, you got to play one way if it's this, but then if Konate's out and he's in here, then it looks different. And there's a lot of moving pieces here, and it feels like they need to start getting guys in that moves the needle. Hato also has been playing as a left fullback because he's playing for a very defensive minded coach in Farioli. That this Ajax team is not the Ajax team that just throws numbers forward, has two attacking fullbacks and getting numbers up. Hato has been playing because it's been a much more conservative team. And he's sort of had to do a bit of that for a lot of the year, that he's used to being in a team that wants to defend and can sit a bit deeper and isn't flying forward. And Liverpool has been different, but if they start to make that change, then again, maybe there's a spot for him to sort of start to develop and build a new system there.
sure. I mean, look, I'm excited to. We've talked about this before, but I'm excited to see what this amazing backroom team manages to do with this Liverpool squad. They've got so much work to do. The fact is that basically everybody who knows anything agrees that Frimpong is not going to be playing fullback in a back four, and that if they're going to sign him, they are going to have to shift shape in order to do it. These Liverpool guys obviously know that as well, so they must have some kind of plan in there, and it'll be interesting if they think that they actually can compete for major honours over the next couple of years while transitioning this squad away from the Van Dijk Salah era, or whether they're kind of like, well, we're kicking the can down the road and we're going to have to take our medicine in 2 years' time rather than taking it now. You touched on it there, but our next topic is the Eredivisie title race, and I think we should move straight on to it. Ajax are top right now. They've lost 2 and drawn 1 of their last 3. They've conceded 8 goals in that time and scored 1. And that's cut a 9-point lead over PSV to 1 point. And PSV as well have a considerably better goal difference. It's like plus 59 to Ajax's plus 30, because PSV have averaged 3 goals a game this season and 1 goal against per game. So they are absolutely steamrolling the league. Ajax could be on the verge of throwing away a potential title here, but they shouldn't really be in the position in the first place, right? It's surprising that they are.
Yeah, this was really a rebuild year for Ajax. This was trying to shift a team that had been really, really poor for sort of 18 months and get it back on track. And to Farioli's credit, to Ajax's credit, they got back on track quicker than I think people expected. This was an Ajax team that I think people maybe expected to finish for sure third, but maybe even fourth this year. And that would have sort of been a improvement and kind of righting the ship. It's a team that had a decent run in Europe that was better than expected, and a team that finds itself sort of, I think, clearing away in the XG difference numbers as the second best team in the league to a very good PSV team. I think this has been a very strong PSV team, and the question as Ajax got the lead and PSV dropped points with a number of ties and things like that was, has Peter Bos sort of burned out this team with this high pressing, very aggressive style? They had obviously a European campaign that ended in sort of flames a little bit with Arsenal and how that kind of played out. So I think there was some questions over the emotions of the team. The emotions of the team for PSV are very much in check. This PSV team in the comeback against Feyenoord was really, really impressive, incredibly emotional win. The expectation is that this PSV team that has been the best team in the league all year, that no longer is really worrying about European competition, will win their last 2 games. It's now on Ajax to take care of business in their last 2 games. Ajax was just sort of routed at home in sort of tragic fashion by NEC, which is not the strongest team. If you're not familiar with them, that's not the strongest team in the league. And
Mm-hmm.
so heading in, Ajax has some difficult games to end the season with Groningen and Twente away, Twente being the strongest of any of the teams that they or PSV have to play. So it comes down to 2 games. I think the feeling is Ajax have to win both. Any drop points will sort of lead to losing the title. And it's really tricky because this is a team that deserves to be in that second position, probably doesn't deserve the title, but because of what they've done, has put themselves in the position to do it. And I don't want to say, again, I'm an analytics guy. I don't want to say you throw the underlying numbers out the window here, but it comes down to 2 games, and 2 games that where you're the favorite, where you're expected to win, where you're
Mm.
expected to take care of business. And fans are really nervous because Farioli is that defensive-minded coach. I think Ajax fans would almost be more comfortable right now if it came down to a final day game against PSV or against a big team that would take a bit more of the offensive.
Yeah, yeah,
Ajax
yeah.
could sit more in a structure, absorb some of that pressure, have a bit of space to maybe hit them. But that the team plays very conservatively, isn't the free flowing attacking team with lots of playmakers. And people are really scared right now because Groningen up north, still playing on a 3G pitch, I believe. Like it feels like the recipe for disaster a little bit for Ajax, and people are very nervous.
Yeah, and then to put it in context, I guess for people who haven't watched much Eredivisie lately, like Ajax have a really good defense, right? They've conceded 30 goals, which is by far the best in the league in 32 games. They're the only team in the Eredivisie to have allowed under a goal a game, which is very Eredivisie stuff. But if they score fewer than 5 goals in their final 2 games, it'll be their worst attacking output in an Eredivisie season since 2005-06, which is when they finished 4th. I think they had that was when they had like Baby Huntela up front, and they're 6th for shots per 90 as well. So this is a side that is just not playing the football that people associate with Ajax. It's also a weirdly old team, right? Like we've talked before about Mokio. We had him on. We had when you came on in I think maybe your first episode. We talked about Mokio. They've got Hato, as we've discussed, but Jordan Henderson, Davy Klaassen, Berghaus, Pasveer, Bertrand Traore, who's knocking on the door of 30, Wout Weghorst, all those guys are really getting on. So it's not even like you look at the squad, right, and think, oh, well, these are 17, 18-year-olds getting blooded, and next season they're likely to explode. So Farioli's kind of unpopular with Ajax fans, isn't he, as a result of this? Like, what is the narrative around him in Amsterdam?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting dynamic because kind of people looking at European football are probably saying like, wow, this is an Ajax team that has been turned around, that
Mm,
is defensively resilient, that doesn't have the best squad, like run in Europe. This is really exciting young coach doing things that look pretty modern. Maybe a bit more pragmatic, very defensive and whatever, that could be really interesting for teams that are maybe feeling a bit leaky at the back or something like that. The feeling in Ajax is we are the biggest club with the biggest budget, and we are not attacking and taking it to team. One of the games in particular against Almere City, one of significantly the smallest team in the league, the Ajax team struggled to create chances, to put up XG, and to really even just hold the ball on top of them and attack them in that sort of way. And I think
mm,
for Ajax fans, that is like it's almost worse than just having bad results. It's like you are denying the club's history or something like that. It's that unwillingness to attack and be ruthless and relentless and throw everything at an opponent is it's something the club sort of prides itself in, and usually gets the benefit of the doubt because the club's budget is much bigger and the team then can have success sort of maybe despite whatever style that they play, but then fans sort of demand this more attacking style. So I think there's some frustration there that, again, regardless of how these games play out, Farioli maybe won't be popular with the fans, even though he's done, I think, even if we just stop it right now and say whatever happens, happens, he's done an objectively really good job at sort of righting the ship. But this Ajax team has a lot of squad development stuff to do
yeah.
to get back to a point where lots of young players are being blooded in and sort of developing, and also sort of changing what some of those transfer things look like. Like you're saying, this is an aging team where there's the majority of the players that have played minutes in the front six of the team are probably not expected to be playing significant minutes in 2 years' time or something like that, which is different for how Ajax usually looks. Usually, if someone's not expected to be there in 2 years, it's because they're going to go to a top European team.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, now it feels like, well, if you're Farioli, it would be great if you won the title. It would be a feather in your cap, and it might be easier to get this move. But you would probably be thinking, maybe I should move on. Like right now, if the fans aren't particularly keen on me, I don't really make sense as Ajax manager. Maybe I make sense elsewhere. And we have seen him on the fringes of managerial discussions, around teams like Tottenham, and some of the mid-table Premier League clubs who maybe might expect to lose their managers, like Bournemouth, for example, with Iraola. what kind of coach is he? I mean, obviously, as you say, his team's been conservative, but what do you think his football would look like elsewhere? Do you think he'd be a particularly good match for any other side?
I have like a little bit of a hard time kind of piecing it together. When the AC Milan job sort of came up and they brought in Conceição, I kind of thought Farioli was going to be a coach in that sort of vein, where they wanted a guy that's still tactically adept, but is able to sort of take a group and just make it a bit more defensively stable, a bit more tactically aware. I mean, I think uh, Farioli also, to his credit, has really tried with Ajax fans. I think he's a person that the criticism is what he's doing on match day, but he's a guy that will go and speak with fans, has been pretty open, has been really tried to step into that role. Like he's taken the role really seriously. And I've got a lot of respect for him for how he's gone about it, just personally. But yeah, I think he's a guy that clearly just lives and breathes tactics, is very intelligent, wants to sort of pick apart other teams and teach players, like work with smart players and really develop that side of the game and have a team that can sort of first stop, neutralize the opponent, and then sort of like problem solve and beat them. I think that's sort of how he sees things and wants things to be done a little bit, which kind of asks the constant question of like, well, what if you have these like playmaking top players that can just do things that no one else can, right? Like again, I at the time I was thinking like, he could end up being a guy for AC Milan. What if he has Rafael Leao? You've got a sort of get out of jail free card. Is that
Mm,
okay to then have everything else be a bit more stable? And that works really, really well. You have Leao, you have Pulisic, you have I think Morata was still there at the time when that was sort of being talked about. So it was a little bit like, could you get out with having limited players in attack, but then be really stable, and that gets the most out of a team like that? Or do you end up not really being able to maximize the most out of that attack? I think the question is still really open on what that looks like for a sort of team with a bigger budget or a Champions League level team. But I think he's a guy that will get a chance if he continues to keep working with the team in that way. And for Ajax, for me personally, I'm an Ajax fan. I have sort of the conflicting view of like, I've almost never seen an Ajax team that is this stable and controlled. And he righted the ship with not necessarily the strongest team. Like, what if this was a stronger group of players? What if this was a group that was a bit more younger and energetic? Would he be able to adapt and adjust to that, or is this just how he's doing it? Um, it can be really hard. I mean, I feel like it's a little bit creature of circumstance, and the results and the underlying numbers that he's gotten out of the group have been really strong. Are these conservative tendencies sort of the way that he saw fixing this team and this group, or is this just sort of how he wants to do things more permanently? I think there's maybe some evidence that that's how it was done before, but that's also probably part of the reason he got brought in, was to do that. It's like, look, this approach feels really pragmatic. It feels like yeah, we don't have to fully change over everything that we've got right away to then hopefully have a better outcome and restabilize the club. So I'm really torn on it, and it would be really personally, I'm hoping that Ajax can close out the season and continue to adjust the squad and look much stronger and look like the first or second best team coming into next season. That would be huge development on expectations from the year before.
hmm And it feels as well like, okay, you do need to be able to put pile the pressure on and keep teams pinned in and score goals against them if you want to win the league. But like, given the way the Eredivisie often goes, like having a more stable, more controlled approach is not the worst idea, right? It's such a chaotic league that if you're that team that can control games better than everybody else, then the chances are, because you're kind of you're at odds with the sort of meta of the league, it feels like there might be an edge for you to find there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think doing things different and unexpected here is possibly how he's done it. It's kind of how the advantage has materialized out of the team that there is. And again, we talked a little bit earlier about Jorrel Hato. Having a Jorrel Hato has been a part of doing that. Having Joseph Sutalo, who's in and around the Croatia team,
Yeah.
line breaking passer, especially when that sort of game gets when you get into that fighting mid block teams, playing in and around midfield, having a guy that can break those lines and combine through those teams, like there's some interesting pieces here that Farioli has managed to sort of get back on track or get people excited about them again and not just frustrated with the team. So
hmm
um, Yeah, a really nervy last couple games for Ajax, which those games start today in the U.S. That's 1 o'clock kickoff for the penultimate Eredivisie game. So we'll see how that pans out. But a very nervy away trip, and PSV host Heracles at home, so a game they would be expected to take care of business convincingly.
Yeah, so I think it's Heracles and Sparta for PSV, and Ajax have got Groningen and Twente. So yeah, make sure that you tune into those. It's nice to see something unusual going on in the Eredivisie right now. Okay, well, this isn't the only exciting title race around Europe, though. Obviously, Germany, France, Spain, and England, basically like all done or basically done. But Italy has somehow turned back into a 1 point race again. Napoli, it looked like they were going to walk away with the title, but they drew 2-2 at the weekend with Genoa, I think. And so now there's just 1 point in the race. There are 2 games left, and Inter, who are in second, have a plus 12 goal difference on Napoli. So it does feel like any slip from Napoli could cost them. Inter, of course, in the Champions League final, but it's not really fixture congestion at this point, right? They've just got to kind of get these wins done. But Inter do have a much harder schedule. They've got Lazio, who are in fifth, Como, who are in 10th to wrap up the season. For Napoli to win it, they've just got to beat Parma, who are 16th, and Cagliari, who are 14th. Are you surprised at the title races at this point, given after Napoli sold Kvicha in January, we kind of felt like, are they throwing their chance at a title in order to get paid now? It certainly felt that way, and I'm sure Antonio Conte felt it was like that.
Yeah, coming into the weekend fixtures, I thought Napoli's got three teams left in the bottom half with not a lot to play for, that they're just going to take care of business. Antonio Conte knows how to motivate a team, and that's just going to be that. And even though Inter has been probably the strongest team in Serie A, we've seen them, yeah, they're in the Champions League final, but they've been good in Serie A. They've been good in the Italian Cup. Like, this is a top team, but wow, maybe they're just not going to get over the line here. And Napoli's just got that little bit of lead to do it. Yeah, that tie brings it all back into contention. These two teams that Napoli have left are of sort of similar standing in the league. Inter, on the other hand, though, this is a team, an older team that has played a lot of minutes against top teams. Again, the game against Barca, it's hard to know exactly what that takes out of you emotionally coming into this. But Inter's next game is against Lazio, and Lazio is a strong European contending team that does some of the things I think that Inter does. Like, I think this is a Lazio team that wants a controlled game, wants to sort of beat you tactically, and I would say it's not a game where I still look at Inter as the stronger team, but it looks like a game where you're like, Inter could very well tie this game. If this game was played at any match week in the season, like you'd have this down as very tight. Tie could be very likely here. Like, Inter are favorites because they're the higher ceiling, but that, it could go either way here. And I think, yeah, Inter have the harder schedule, but we talked about it with the Eredivisie matches. When you get down to this point in the season, it's not, I don't want to use the cliche, the form goes out the window or whatever, but there are different factors that become more important. The individual matchups of the game become really important. How much Marcus Thuram is able to contribute to this game if he's playing, how much playmaking can Çalhanoğlu and things like that do, versus at the other side, like Matteo Guendouzi has not had the same amount of whether it's physical or emotional intensity on his body the last like month, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a player that could really do something for Lazio on the other side. So very, very big games here to wrap up the Serie A season, where I think both teams are feeling nervous. Inter probably feeling a bit more of fatigue. And again, I don't think they'll be scared of Napoli, but that's a stronger opponent than anyone. Sorry, scared of Lazio, but that's a stronger opponent than anyone Napoli has to face. Whereas Napoli is probably feeling a little bit nervous, where like, wow, we've got this in the hand, we're rolling, we can really do this. And then dropping those points and really leaving the door open for Inter if they make one little slip, right? And again, this is the Napoli team that, after losing Kvicha, is not an offensive powerhouse. They're a good
Yeah.
team that deserves to be sort of in that top group, but they're not a team that has sort of lit the goal scoring on fire this year and just blows teams out of the water. That's not what this Napoli team is. And again, if you're leaving things close to late here, a lot of things can happen. So it's yeah, compared to these other leagues where the title race may be wrapped up earlier than expected, it is very much on in Italy right now.
I just don't know how Antonio Conte does it though, right? Like we're looking at this. We hated their transfer business last summer. Like really slated it in the newsletter, and Lukaku isn't just there for this year. They owe him for a big contract. He's got 13 goals, but he's got 10 assists in the league. Now that is from 3.5 expected assists. But this output is crazy. McTominay has 15 goal involvements, and even post Kvicha, they've used Raspadori a little bit more, and he's got 7 goal involvements in 9 starts. And this just feels like par for the course for Antonio Conte. Like all these little squad players, somehow he gets the value out of them. Do we have any idea how he does it? Like, is this just because it can't just be okay? There's an element of luck sometimes, but clearly there's more than that because he does this kind of consistently. Like McTominay's season reminds me a little bit of that Marcus Llorente season for Atletico Madrid a couple of years ago when they ended up winning the league. But I'd have much more faith that Conte can sustain this over the course of a season than and into next year than Simeone was able to with Llorente.
Yeah, I think the piece of the recruitment that's really interesting here is like I'm not changing my mind. I'm still like I don't really know what Billy Gilmore and McTominay for
Yeah.
those prices are going to do. I think there's more value out there, but I do think in line with how Conte does things. I think everyone has sort of heard the stories in the past. Conte comes in, he's demanding of not just leadership and what budget he's going to demand, he's demanding of the players and how hard they train. He's demanding of the kitchen staff and how they prepare the food. He is a guy that wants to raise standards and wants to drive those environments. And a lot of times that can go one of two ways. If you've got maybe more established players that go, look, I work hard, I train hard, I'm a really top player, but I like having, I like having a burger once a week. That's like a little treat for me. That keeps me going. That I do that with my family on a Thursday night every week. We've always done that. It
Mm-hmm.
makes the kids happy, whatever. Like who do you think you are? I'm a top player, right? It can go that way and have a lot of abrasion, or you can get these guys that are motivated, that have something to prove, that go, you know what, that is a better standard. I'm willing to push myself if because I believe you're going to help me win a title, and that we can do this together if we really all do this. And I think Billy Gilmore and Scott McTominay really fit that. I think Scott McTominay has sort of always had a bit of a reputation as a very professional, hardworking, great. He's a guy that has a great reputation at Man United. That when he's gone back and visited, has said hello to the sort of more front office staff and administrative staff and things like that. That he's a guy that has this really good reputation, and that an environment like that Conte's setting, where there's something to prove. If we all push ourselves, that we can do it. Again, Lukaku coming off of maybe a period where he needs a bit of a reclamation and someone that believes in him and does that. I think it's brought the group together. Now, we've always said with Conte that it's not about what he's doing in coaching in one season. It's these choices and these tactics ultimately lower the ceiling of the group maybe over time and will
Mm-hmm.
prevent you from having better players in that period. So I think that it's as much as it's still unbelievable and a testament to one of the great sort of lead coaches of this time. Obviously, Pep Guardiola being the guy that everywhere he goes, he wins the league competition. Antonio Conte is another one that has been really superb at doing that. And I think it's testament to how he does this and how he can get a group to sort of buy in, commit to each other, and raise those standards for a period of time before possibly the age and injury due to training, or also again sort of those squad choices can then catch up to you, right? Maybe they get a bit too fixated on, nope, this is the guy, I need this guy, and then
Mm-hmm.
you miss out on some other talent. So yeah, but very impressive season from Napoli. I mean, if again at the start, if you told me they were losing Osimhen and Kvicha, I'd be like, okay, well then they're going to finish fifth or sixth. Like
Yeah.
those are players that I love and that I think are really really top players. That again in that Napoli title winning season were so impressive, and to think that they could be not a part at all, or again with Kvicha leaving early on, not a part of this next Napoli winning season is sort of unfathomable at the time and is a really impressive achievement. That being said, this is an Inter team that I think, again, that Neil Shalat is in love with, and this is a guy that watches a lot of soccer. This Inter team is really elite, and I would expect this Inter Milan team to, by hook or by crook, get across and win both of these games. So the pressure's on Napoli to get it done in these two games. These are Antonio Conte will be treating these as cup finals, must win, and we'll have this group very fired up. It's making sure that they don't get counterpunched with all that adrenaline running through their veins.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio Conte is going to want to sub himself on in these games, but Kvicha could end up like denying Inter a title and denying them a Champions League, like one of those in absentia. It's honestly super exciting. I think that Serie A is one of the most watchable leagues in the world. Like the Champions League race is also super interesting there. But you've got to watch these games. This is like appointment TV over the next couple of weeks. It's the only league outside of the Eredivisie where actually no, that's not true. The Portuguese league as well is still balanced on a knife edge. But we really recommend people check this out. And if Napoli do this again, like for like the second time in 3 years, it will be absolutely insane. Like Naples will explode
Yeah,
like it did,
it's
like it
hard
did
to
in
it's hard to
79 AD.
yeah, it's like very incredible to think about like De Laurentiis and how this sort of Osimhen transfer was maybe mismanaged, that they
Yeah.
wouldn't come down from this fee, and like he's again such a powerful sort of personality, but also the ways in which there's drawback there and maybe confusion. But it's sort of like Florentino Perez at Real Madrid, right? You might love him, you might hate him, but he these are characters that have, I think, pretty clearly unwavering passion and commitment to their clubs. And sort of that force of personality has driven Napoli to some extent to take like very big risks that like could have exploded. And it's like they're risks that I think most people just wouldn't take,
No, definitely not.
especially in the case of Napoli. But again, even with Real Madrid, we've already got Vinicius, we've got Rodrigo. Yeah, we got to sign Mbappe. These are all guys that you go, well, they just have to figure it out, because if they do, it could be amazing, and if they don't, then I'm not sure. But they've got to figure it out because we're Real Madrid and Napoli. It's felt a little bit like that. Like it wasn't necessarily the squad that we thought Conte should be taking. That there was some real risk for him as an individual, but that obviously, yes, he's a top coach and he's a huge personality, and it felt like at any point that could explode and go the other way. But they've put themselves in a position to win what would be a monumental title. I mean, would
Yeah,
be
it really would.
really a really impressive achievement, especially again against an Inter Milan team that are in what second Champions League final in 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'm really excited about it. I think we'll check in a couple of weeks and we could pick over the bones. But before we finish here today, the championship playoffs are also going on right now. We've got our finalists there lined up after some pretty eventful games over the last 2 nights. But there is a player who is going to be featuring in the playoff final, who I know that you wanted to shine a little light on, right?
Yes. So Sunderland, in dramatic fashion at the Stadium of Light, won. Daniel Ballard with a header that goes bar down. The place absolutely erupts. The interesting sort of side story is that Sunderland play in the Championship playoff final, the most valuable game in football, against Sheffield United. And so that's really exciting. There's some tactical matchups there. These are the third and fourth teams. So these are sort of the next best teams that didn't get automatically promoted, who have earned it all year and then earned it sort of in the playoffs as well. So big matchup, really exciting. Sunderland, if they win the game, will have to pay AS Roma £20 million. And you go, well,
Mm-hmm.
why is that? Well, that's because they'll have a mandatory buy clause on playmaker, sort of wide number 10 Enzo Lefebvre, who is a player who, if you go, well, why has Enzo Lefebvre gone from Roma to Sunderland? It's to play for former manager Régis Lebris, who is coaching Sunderland and has got them into this position. And I think that's a really fascinating moment here, that you have this final, and Sunderland's sort of game plan here was, let's try to get a player that's maybe above the station, playing at a top level in Serie A, has gone for millions and millions of transfer fees in the past. Let's get him in, and we'll push the cost to only if we get promoted do we have to do this, and then we'll pay it. But otherwise, we get this player in to hopefully give us a real shot at doing it. It's a really interesting sort of financial transfer strategy to raise the ceiling of the team in the short term to hopefully get across the line. And we'll see. It comes down to one individual game.
Yeah, I mean, Lefebvre. Lefay, it's really surprising that he ended up there because he's a player who a lot of us were, very excited about when he was at Lorient. And then he went off to Rennes a couple of seasons ago. And that was kind of an interesting move because Rennes at that time were like really stockpiling young French talent. Like that particular squad back then, they went on a real like transfer bender and they had like Martin Terrier and they had Ludovic Blas, but they also had Desiree Doué and Arnaud Calimuendo. They had Benjamin Bourigeaud, who's obviously like a slightly older player, but they just had Jeremy Doku was there. Actually, they had like tons of interesting guys, and then he went on to Roma, and for some reason, in half a season, Roma just decided they didn't like him. And I guess Sunderland have used him in a more conservative way, right? Like in the past, what we've seen for him is more midfielder shaped than this season, where he's been more winger shaped. Like he's receiving more progressive passes up the wing, and his pass accuracy is down and fewer progressive passes. Like he's just less involved in play, but he's maintained a load of the output that made him exciting when he was young, right? He was a great ball carrier. His defensive output was incredible. And he was far better than you'd expect for such a slight guy, because he is a little guy. And he was also a really, really good passer. And I remember when he was at Lorient, my argument with him was, this is kind of your modern version of Santi Cazorla, you know? Like he's a guy who's like a little bit of a central midfielder, a little bit of a 10, can play out wide on the left, but he can just basically do anything in possession, and he's going to be surprisingly good off the ball too. He's only 25. Should other teams be trying to steal him from Sunderland? Because I know Sunderland, yeah, they do have this clause. It's never quite clear how those work. Like Sunderland would be obliged to pay it, but Lefay could presumably say no and go elsewhere if somebody else were to come in. Should a Premier League team be trying to poach him? Because he always felt like, maybe this was more in the De Zerbi time, but it felt like he'd be an interesting Brighton type player. When you look at, a Potter West Ham, you think, could he be a fit there? Especially if Paquetá goes. It seems strange if Sunderland get just a clear run at somebody who is so multi-talented and is in his prime.
Yeah, it's a Sunderland team who I think have prided themselves on having really good strikers this year, which is sort of why he's been sort of pushed into this sort of left midfielder coming inside playmaking sort of role, is because they want to play with two strikers and they feel like that's a strength of their group. So it's been like not necessarily the most natural fit for a player that I think has a bit of pedigree and profile there. I think for me, when you said De Zerbi's Brighton team, I think part of what gets me excited would be to see him in sort of a 3-4-3 shape that gives him license to go in different places, keeps him a bit more central in the pressing so that he doesn't have to cover the sort of big area in those wide spaces. And again, you said slight, but this is a guy that is really strong. He's strong, he's quick over short spaces, and he's very tenacious. Like I think the thing that makes him feel like this sort of modern player is that he is both clearly intelligent, but he
Mm-hmm.
is also skillful in tight spaces. And when the ball gets turned over, often not by something that he's done, he's got the skill to pull off things that other players can't. But when his teammates lose the ball, he's going to fight and get it back. He's not giving up on the play. He's not a playmaker with this elite skill that then is disappointed that his teammates can't do the same as him. That ball turns over and he will chase guys down. There was a point where he was getting held back by the Coventry player, sort of jokingly, sort of we there's a foul here, there's a collision, we ended up on the ground, and he's like pulling the guy off him so he can sprint back and chase after the ball. Like I think this is a guy that is, I think that's where you can see him in this vein. It To get the most out of him or to make the transfer fee worth it, though, I think there's a little bit of like system effect here that you need to have the right shape, and that I would love to see him maybe get into a team that has that 3-4-3. He can play as one of those, that inside sort of left attacking midfielder, have an option flying on the outside of him, and then can defend and press sort of both in front of him with that attacking group with the center forward, but then back pressure and close into the midfield and help his team win the ball there. That would be something that would get me really excited. It's just a question of sort of finding that team. Another one I'd sort of throw out, again, we're not sure exactly what will happen with this Bournemouth team, especially as it looks like they're maybe more of an outsider or not going to get the Champions League spots that they maybe hoped they would get earlier in the year. Again, really good team. If the role that Houston Clauvert has sort of played for that team, and I know I've just said I'd like to see him in a 3-4-3, and this is a team that's not playing that way, but Clauvert as that sort of pressing number 10 that has freedom to do things offensively, but works very hard defensively in different places. That could be a type that's a type of role, a type of team that I could see Enzo Lefebvre really contributing to and respurring his career. I mean, a promotion here for a Sunderland team, and then we'll sort of see what happens for him. But I think he's still a player with a lot of intrigue and a lot to offer for sure.
Yeah, having played like different roles, different styles, and having played both in Liga, well, and I guess technically in Serie A too, but in Liga and in the Championship, like it does show that you have the ability to play at different paces, and that you're up to a more physical, high tempo league. And players coming out of the Championship have been translating very, very well to the highest level over the last couple of years. So it takes away that other slight risk, I guess, to going for him. I love Lefebvre. I think he's a really exciting little player. I think that you're right. It would be nice to put him under a coach who'd say, okay, this week you're going to play in a 3-man midfield, and this week you're going to play behind the striker in one of those, those two roles, and this week maybe we're going to play you out wide, and just give him a chance to show all the things that he's capable of doing. But he's clearly like a bit of a tactical godsend for a manager. He can just perform a bunch of roles, and he's going to work his ass off doing it. So I hope to see him next year in a top flight, whether it's with Sunderland or not. I think that brings us to the end of this week's episode, Hayden. Where can people find you between now and the next time we see you?
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky, H Van Brewer. Right now, this week, I'll be nervously watching and analyzing the
Yeah.
Eredivisie run-in and also the EFL playoffs in addition to the Championship one. League One and League Two are really spicy this year. It feels like those playoff matchups are really exciting. So I'll have my eyes on those.
Yes, that's a great place to check in if you do want to follow this Ajax title race to its conclusion. Thank you very much for listening or watching. Please drop any suggestions for transfers or teams you'd like us to look at in the comments. We really do appreciate your support. Make sure you're signed up for the newsletter as well. We're going through our big team rebuilds at the moment, and I think we've got the second installment of the Spurs rebuild dropping today. So that should be a little treat for everybody too. We will catch you next week when we will be bringing you the podcast version of the Tottenham rebuild. And Hayden, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Bye.